Good morning, Mike. How are you doing today, sir?
Good morning, Arrow. You ate your Wheaties, I can tell.
Oh man, if you only knew how passion driven I am about sharing conversations. It's never an interview. It's about conversations. And when you talk about a subject like brevity, you are right up my alley, buddy.
God bless.
You know, and I think what changed me about brevity was a program director came into me on the air and he put a dictionary in front of me and he says, "Look at this word." I said, "Yeah." He says, "What is it?" I said, "It's brevity." And he says, "Practice it." And so all of a sudden that changed my
Wow.
entire radio career.
Yes, because we don't do it naturally. So, Arrow, I came up as a newspaper reporter before we started. I and my two co-authors of Smart Brevity, the book, The Power of Saying More with Less. My two co-authors, Jim Van High and Roy Schwartz, we started the website Politico, and over 10 years grew that to 500 people. And then we started Axios. But before that, I worked for the New York Times, Richmond Times-Dispatch, Washington Post, and I was literally paid to type, to produce words to go between the ads. And the incentives were all wrong. This is what your news director realized was way ahead of their time, that we thought that we had to type all these words to fill up the space between the ads, when in fact, nobody was reading them. And now in the digital age, we have the data to show people are not reading all those words. And so just as your news director said with brevity, if you think on the front end about what you want to say, and instead of thinking about yourself and your beautiful words that you want to pile up, like traffic in my hometown of Orange County, California, instead of think about the audience. That's what Smart Brevity, the book, does, is it flips it on its head and says, audience first, whether I'm asking for a raise, whether I am giving a talk, whether I'm writing an email, whether I am leading a Zoom. What about the other person? What's going to break through with them? And that's where your news director was spot on.
Well, in the real world, we're not. I mean, it's almost like we have forgotten that grammar exists. We forget there's a period, a comma, a colon, and it's like, you know what? Get to the point.
No, that's right. We love to pile up the words. A friend of mine gave me a phrase that I like. They talk about thesaurus words. And thesaurus words are words that sound fancy, but you're just piling them up there instead of boiling down what you really want to say. Someone who your news director would find a kindred spirit with, a minister that we interviewed for Smart Brevity, the book. My co-author, Jim Van High, was sitting in the congregation, and the minister, David Glade, was talking about advice that he gave his kids. And he was talking about how you live life. And he boiled it down to 5 words. Life in 5 words. Do the next right thing. How's that for Smart Brevity?
But it's so true. But the problem with being somebody who practices and lives out brevity is that a lot of people question me. And do you cover that inside the book? In other words, people go, "Why aren't you telling me the full story?" I just did. You just chose not to listen.
It's so true. And this is something that Smart Brevity, the book, shows you, is that it's short, not shallow. That if you've really thought through the one thing that you want people to remember and thought about how to say it, that you can say it in a way that's very convincing. You can make your point, and then whether it's a radio newscast or whether it's an email or whether it's a letter, make your point. What's new? Like, you think about if you were to sit down and have physical, literal breakfast together. Like, what do you do when you sit down? What's new? Like, what do I know that you don't? I want to get your attention. And that's one of the big things that we talk about in Smart Brevity is grab me, right? Like, right at the top. Don't meander in. Don't back into what you want to say, because you're going to lose me.
Yes.
Make your point.
Yep.
And then that does 2 things. You know this is your life, your business. That right away you're showing the audience that you mean business and you have something interesting to say, that it's worthy of their time. Axios in Greek is worthy of their time, and you're not going to insult their intelligence, and you're not going to waste your time. That's a way to be respectful and you instantly have my attention.
Mm-hmm. I was blessed with the opportunity to speak to a broadcasting class this past week, and they were talking about, well, I don't know how to interview people. Then stop interviewing. Just make a statement. Just say something. And then the person you're with has to fill in the dead air.
That is genius. And something that you will love is how this is smart brevity for interviewers, which is a friend of mine, Adam Rogers, who works now at Wired, taught me this long ago on the campaign trail. The best follow-up question in the world is, huh? Because we're just like you say, we force them to fill in the silence. And its twin is the second best follow-up question in the history of the world is, come on.
Yeah, that's it. So true. Do you think, though, that we waste too much time talking to the wrong people?
We don't talk to the wrong people. We say the wrong things, right? Like we waste our time with them. And instead of, and a lot of this comes, like, you know, this era that, like, everybody's faking it, right? Like, don't tell anybody, but everybody's faking it. And one of the ways that we fake it is by vomiting words, right? Like, we hide the fact that we don't really know the material or don't really know what we want to ask, or we don't have the confidence to just tell you what we think or just ask you for money or whatever we're trying to do. Instead, we just talk, and we talk ourselves out of whatever we want. And so you're talking to the right person, you're just saying the wrong stuff. Yeah. And so sharpen it. Audience first on the front end. What's the one thing I want them to remember? The one thing I want them to do, say it conversationally, say it respectfully, say it cheerfully, and then you know what I'm going to say? Just stop. That will give you power. You will be heard.
So funny that you brought that up, because when I put the book down, the first thing that I wrote was, brevity is confidence, not judgment.
So good. And our first editor wrote this on the wall of Axios when we were in a little shared space. Brevity is confidence. Length is fear. That says it all. We're trying to hide.
So true. My God, we're on the same page. I love talking with people who get it. I really do.
So are you still in touch with that news director?
No. He went on to become a record rep. And so I'm but I'll tell you, his name was Mike England, and he really changed my life that day on everything.
I love that.
Yeah.
Such good advice. I'm going to steal that. And there's one other tip about the word brevity, which is 3 syllables, right? Mm-hmm. Like, one thing that will help your listeners, if they're writing a memo, writing a subject line, writing a text, the shorter the word, the stronger the word.
True.
So if I'm writing a subject line and I see a 3-syllable word, I see if there's a 2-syllable word. If there's a 2-syllable word, I try to boil it down to 1 syllable, because those are the words that punch.
So true. My God, Mike, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Well, Arrow, thank you so much. I love that you ate your Wheaties. I love that we are kindred spirits. I'd love to see your listeners at smartbrevity.com. There's other tips and data there, and it's super easy to get the book. We give you ways to get it from independent booksellers, support local businesses, and you can get it from the big guys too. So we're easy at smartbrevity.com. And Arrow, I'm grateful for you having me on and then making me just stop.
Be brilliant today, sir.
Be brief, be confident, be heard.